We're live. Hello. I'm still going to do it, even though I really, really dislike Jerry Seinfeld these days, as I'm sure a lot of you guys do. But good evening. A Memorial Day. It's very interesting how people say Happy Memorial Day. There is really nothing happy about today. It's probably the one holiday where we should not be saying Happy Memorial Day. It's an acknowledgement of those that served our country and obviously paid the ultimate sacrifice. I've always said that I am a huge supporter of our military. I am the biggest opponent of our military industrial complex. There is a lot to be said for defending your nation. It's another thing entirely to be defending corporate special interests, which is essentially what everything has evolved into at this point. And so I hope you're all doing well. I am not going to keep our guests waiting too long, but obviously just wanted to acknowledge, that today is still a day where, you can obviously hate the American empire, a lot of the things that we represent, but there are a lot of people who join the military for various reasons, not the least of which is, for many, it's their only way out of their dire circumstances when it comes to education, money, and so on. And so to have the opportunity to try to make something of yourself, it is a low down, dirty shame to say the least, but the military is one of the ways that a lot of people, especially that come from poverty, find their way to a brighter future. That is one of the carrots that the military does provide. And so today is obviously a very somber day, to say the least, because as it is Memorial Day, it's also a day where a massacre, and it's going to continue, is taking place in Rafah. And I have pulled no punches about what is going on right now, as I would assume that the rest of you guys that are here and beyond are probably feeling the same way. The question comes down to, is there going to be a breaking point for the Zionist movement? The answer is no. There is no breaking point. The decapitated babies that have now been shown, as a lot of you have probably seen, if you think that that's what's going to stop this from happening, it isn't. And I'm going to get into that with Greg in just a minute, because I had the opportunity to speak with somebody over the weekend at one of the Memorial Day events that we happened to go to, that Jen and I did go to. And I had the chance to speak with somebody who, it was a friendly conversation, as friendly as I can make it. But let me tell you something. When it comes to the mindset that a lot of people feel regarding Israel, that are in favor of what's going on, this is beyond just a political ideology. This is a religious indoctrination. And once you get to that level, there is no reason anymore. Reason is out the window. So if you think that you're going to have some productive conversation with somebody who believes that it is their divine right to commit genocide in order to get what they want in Israel, I'm sorry, but that is the bridge too far. Now, not everybody's like that. Don't get me wrong, but I happen to encounter one that is like that. And that person, like I said, we're going to talk about it with Greg. But for those of you that are here, please hit the like button. Make sure that you are subscribed, and make sure that you share. This conversation is very important, as many of the conversations that we will have throughout the summer, as Jen is doing her thing and we are doing ours. But this is one of those circumstances where I want to bring on people that know more about these topics than I do. I can read. I have a fairly good understanding of what's going on, but it pales in comparison to, he may not want to be called an expert, but I'll just say he's more of an expert than I am on the topic of the Israel-Palestine conflict, but in reality, the Israel genocide of the Palestinian people. Greg Stoker, welcome to Pontificating with Pete on Generational Change. I finally said it right for the first time.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me.
It's really great to have you here. And needless to say, this is not a topic that we really want to have to talk about, because it is deeply disturbing on so many levels. But you have been at the forefront of covering what is going on and letting people know that this is not only happening, but it's a lot worse than you think. And now that we are getting on the ground footage of what is really happening in Rafah, it's probably infinitely worse than we could even imagine. What can you share with us right off the bat in terms of where things stand right now on the ground in Rafah?
Okay, well, that's a question we can take from a number of different angles. First of all, if you're not familiar with me, my name's Greg Stoker. I'm a former United States Army Ranger. Did 4 combat deployments to Afghanistan. I have a background in special operations and military intelligence, and so that's where I've been coming at the whole Israel and Palestine conflict since October from a military perspective. So, okay. I guess the main focus of attention is the massacre that happened in the Tel Al Sultan neighborhood in Western Rafah last night. Okay, so there was a few iterations of conflicting information that was happening. If you look on the Zionist apologist media side, the second the footage got leaked and started making the rounds of the internet, we saw prospectively, potentially a father or at least an adult holding up the body of a decapitated child, toddler, infant. It looked more like a toddler. But yeah, and so that kind of started going viral. And then the first stage of propaganda was, okay, the IDF is saying, and the Israeli Hezbollah Corps is saying essentially, that was a misfired Hamas rocket, like what happened at the Baptist Hospital in October, early November with Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And then the IDF came out and said, no, that was a precision strike against 2 Hamas commanders that were coordinating operations in West Bank out of southern Rafah, which is incredibly stupid because there's no way that whoever's coordinating Hamas operations in West Bank is not doing it out of Gaza. That's insane. There's shoddy communications. It's the most heavily surveilled location on the planet right now. If they're coordinating operations, they're going to be doing it out of Jordan, probably Amman or Damascus, Syria, or Homs in Syria. So to make the assertion that they're doing it, that they're coordinating operations with resistance forces in West Bank out of Gaza is really stupid. We knew it was a lie. That's just not how it works. I'm not going to, that's an expansive lecture length conversation, but just take for granted that that's not how it happens. And then it came out earlier today that Benjamin Netanyahu said, oh no, it was a tragic mistake. So we knew it was a lie. So when the IDF publishes the names of these senior Hamas commanders, they're made up individuals generally, unless they strike a target in Aleppo or Beirut, who they actually have targeting data on because they actually are targeting Hamas in foreign countries. Yeah, they're not doing the same for Gaza because they don't really have any targeting data on them. I used to target kinetic strikes on HVT targets like Islamic State, Al-Qaeda back in Afghanistan. I know how it works. The technology hasn't changed. They've got nothing. They're running their entire targeting through an AI. And so the AI made a decision, or somebody made a decision, to strike a refugee camp knowing there was no Hamas targets there because Benjamin Netanyahu, again, came out and said that was a tragic mistake, directly contradicting the statement of the IDF. So we know why they made the strike. They made the strike because Hamas, for the first time in a couple months, shot 8 rockets out of Gaza at Tel Aviv. And so what did Israel do? They did a tit-for-tat temper tantrum, shot 8 missiles, most likely Hellfire missiles, out of a drone, like a Predator or a Reaper drone, at a refugee camp. And it's very transparently a revenge strike against civilians, which is by definition collective punishment, which is by definition a war crime. So that's where it stands right now. They don't have targeting data on Hamas. They haven't really. I mean, I'm not saying they haven't shot Hamas or they haven't conducted actual legitimate airstrikes against Hamas, but that's not their main focus. That's not what they've been doing. And yeah, they're basically fighting a holding action in Gaza. They don't have an exit strategy. This is not just my assessment. This is field grade and general officers. Field grades like major, colonel, generals like brigadier general, general officers have come out to Haaretz, Ynet News, Mariv, all of these different media outlets within Israel saying, yeah, we can't defeat Hamas. And some of the most liberal estimates is like potentially we could defeat Hamas by 2026, 2027. I think that's personally absurd, but at least they're acknowledging they can't defeat Hamas. Yeah.
You can't defeat them. You kill 15,000, again, on the very conservative estimates, the number's probably exceptionally higher. you kill 25,000 kids. What the hell do you think is going to happen? You are going to create caliphates everywhere. It's like a blob. It'll just grow and grow and grow. Am I wrong?
Well, no, you're not. You're not wrong. I mean, name one example from history where empire has been able to defeat a indigenous uprising. I can't think of one. Didn't work in Vietnam. Didn't work when Napoleon invaded Spain in the Peninsular War. It didn't work. It's never worked, and it's not going to work now. And again, they have no exit strategy. They have nowhere to go. So they're just fighting a holding action, keeping this thing going until they can figure out what to do. But there's nothing to figure out, because one of the things that kept Israel safe for so long was what they call their deterrence capacity. The idea that the IDF was the strongest military in the Middle East. The Mossad was omniscient. They see everything. They hear everything. They're everywhere. Now, October 7th and this subsequent war has proved that that's not true. They are not a competent military. The Mossad has a lot of gaps in its information base and its intelligence synchronization protocols. It's a mess. It's a mess, and they have nowhere to go politically or militarily.
Why do you think Netanyahu felt the need to come out and say that this was an accident, almost as if to suggest that he's? I mean, granted, it's probably just political misdirection, as is usually the case. But why did you think he felt obligated to make a statement regarding what has happened?
Well, usually I've been tracking their information operations since this thing began, and generally they have three tacks. What they try first, and if they can get away with it, they say it was actually Hamas. They were driving a little Hilux, and it was full of like ramshackle explosives, and it just blew up and killed a bunch of people. And that usually doesn't work. So they tried that first, again, saying it was a misfired Hamas rocket. Okay, that didn't work. Then they said it was a precision military strike. That didn't hold up because they'd have to prove it. They'd have to give SSE data or targeting data, like we did with, I don't know, bin Laden. We had pictures of him. We had an identity of who he was hitting. We had all this intelligence product that we could give to the public to prove that that's why we went illegally into Pakistan and, took him out. So like whenever you make these illegal strikes, you have to be like, okay, yeah, it's illegal. Here's why we did it, and provide evidence. And they've never done that. So when it's very egregious, they don't even try to do that. They just say it was a mistake. It's war. War's horrible, sucks, but like keep a stiff upper lip. So this happened. When's the last time it happened? It happened with the World Central Kitchen when those a bunch of those foreign aid workers were deliberately targeted and killed in order to stop other aid agencies from sending people in. That was their goal by directly targeting the World Central Kitchen trucks. Again, drones shooting Hellfire missiles with massive sensor suites, able to see World Central Kitchen on top of each of the trucks that deliberately shot 1, 2, 3 over the space of like an hour. So, and what did they do? There's no way to explain that away because they had cleared their route with the IDF, saying, "Hey, we're World Central Kitchen. We're going around down this corridor, down this highway during this time." And the IDF's like, "Okay, roger that." And they still shot them. So every time they do something that they can't explain away or propaganda away, they say, "Oh, it was a mistake. My bad. It's war." So that's what they're doing now because it will not hold up to scrutiny. So they're getting ahead of the narrative by saying, "Yeah, it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. They knew what they were shooting."
Do you think the Zionist movement recognizes that they've reached a point of no return? Do you think there's anybody within the ranks that doesn't recognize that this is very much a, like a Mussolini type situation that they've put themselves in?
Yeah, we've seen kind of glimmers of that. We've had ex-officials that work for Shin Bet and the Mossad saying that, we've fallen into Hamas's trap. And this is Hamas's goal, to make Israel look bad, to make us isolated, to make us become a pariah state like South Africa. And they've actually referenced South Africa, but I don't see a very pervasive connection where they're making the connection between, apartheid South Africa and Israel. Because no, they still believe they're the victim. They've dropped like 2+ nukes worth of explosive ordnance on Gaza, still the victim. I don't see any large numbers of people waking up to the fact that, Israel is becoming isolated. Plus they have their own internal disputes. Like there's growing concerns about civil internecine violence between right-wing armed Judeans and liberal Israelis, who are completely disagreeing about the direction of the regime and where they wanted to go. So it's all falling apart. But no, to circle back to your question, I mean, if there are people that are recognizing, hey, we need to pump the brakes and stop this, they're not in the government. Now, there are plenty of pundits like in left-wing newspapers like Haaretz writing op-eds about this, but they're not making policy. And yes, they're still Zionists, but like at least they understand the basic dynamics of what's going on geopolitically, but they're not in government. So there's no breaks happening right now.
The danger of how far they're willing to take this, I think, is a complete unmasking of the unholy alliance between Israel and the United States, which has been going on for 75 years. But again, it was all done for the purpose of controlling Middle East oil. I mean, that's that it's the outpost, as they say, is that they had needed this land. And of course, we know that there's probably in excess of $1 trillion worth of natural gas under Gaza soil, which was probably the tipping point of, how they were going to figure out how to get this done. I am still of the, you want to call it conspiratorial mind, go right ahead, of the fact that I do believe that Netanyahu intended for October 7th to happen, and that they were looking for whatever reason they could in order to go in and do what they're, the ultimate case of mowing the lawn, because they do want to control that coastline front, which without question, when you think about the rich natural resource, that's what most wars or any conflict of this magnitude is usually fought over. It's fought over these very wealthy natural resources, and Gaza's no exception.
Yeah, that's true. And when it comes to conspiracy theories, like I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe 9/11 was an inside job. However, when it comes to October 7th, it doesn't matter if you're a conspiracy theorist or not, whether Israel had prior knowledge, whether they got warned and because of arrogance and hubris, they decided to disregard it, or they were completely caught unawares. Doesn't matter. Their reaction and their behavior would have been the same no matter what happened. So, when it comes to natural gas resources, yeah, Israel was created in part to control Middle Eastern oil. However, there were Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time, at the founding of Israel, General Marshal Admiral Nimitz, who wrote memos to Truman saying, hey, this is not the best way to do this. If we create the state of Israel, we will destabilize the region for a century to come. We will alienate the our potential Arab allies and leave the region open for USSR expansion and influence. And we're seeing that play out now with China, with Russia, with Iran, because we're no longer a stable actor. The United States and their unconditional support of Israel, this massive genocidal bombing campaign. Israel's also shot a consulate in Damascus of another sovereign nation, which is a direct attack on Iranian sovereignty. We are looking more like unreliable rogue actors. And who are you going to go with? You're going to go with the West that's complicit in this genocide, that's not acting in their own best interest geopolitically, and therefore the best interest of their allies, or are you going to go with more stable actors like Iran, who responded to the bombing of its consulate with a performative strike? No damage was really done. And China, who just doesn't really get involved in armed conflicts, just uses long-term strategic planning like their Belt and Road Initiative to, make other countries more wealthy. And that's reductive. But what I'm saying is like, this is hurting Western hegemony in ways that I don't think Western politicians even realize. So
how much stake do you put in the fact that we have a president who is not cognitively there and creates a real vacuum in the power structure in DC?
Okay, so with Biden, yeah, I mean he's not cognitively there, but he's not the only mover and shaker of how these things work. There's Congress that's bought out that would support him unconditionally. The Senate also is, and it's not just bought out by AIPAC or Kufi, which is, if you're not aware, Christians United for Israel. There's a large lobbying bloc.
No, but if you could explain that real quick, I'm actually not too familiar with that. I know the Christian Zionist movement infinitely trumps the Jewish Zionist movement. A lot of people don't realize that. But if you could just talk real brief about that organization, I'm not as familiar with them as I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth looking into. It's just Christians United for Israel. They raise money for IDF units. They raise money to lobby politicians. It's just the Zionism on the Christian level. But the thing is, it's not just Kufi and AIPAC. It's also the MIC, the military industrial complex, the energy sector lobbying politicians for, to support Israel. So, there's a lot of momentum behind it. It's not just the president. Now, Joe Biden, his policy of unconditionally supporting Israel, because he does have executive power. He could halt arms shipments. He could force AIPAC to register as a foreign agent, which they should, because they are by definition a foreign agent. He has a lot of levers to pressure Israel. He has levers to pressure them in the United Nations because the U.S. is the head honcho at the UN Security Council. He has all these things he can do, but he doesn't. So, and I'm not sure if he's cognitively there. I don't think it mattered because he's a self-proclaimed Zionist. He has been. This has been his policy to unconditionally support Israel for the past 50 years, and of his political career. He met Golda Meir early in his youth as a young congressman, and he's been hardcore Israel no matter what. So I don't think like this a dog's going to learn new tricks this late in life. So I've been trying to figure out why Biden's doing this, because it's so bad for long-term United States strategic interests. But I don't know. Maybe he is a religious Zionist, and it's weird because he's Catholic, but maybe there's a religious aspect to it.
Yeah, well, what makes it worse is he's an Irish Catholic, and of course, I'm Irish on my father's side, so I think that I think the hypocrisy is on a level that even he can't measure, because at the end of the day, Ireland was pretty much the first country that came out in support of the Palestinian people, and so how he squares that circle, I'm not really sure. But then again, it's American politics, and it's always the highest bidder that's going to get the support. And even when he tepidly suggested that he was going to change course in some way, the Zionist conglomerate that controls Capitol Hill said, well, maybe it's time for us to move over to Trump a little bit, and just kind of show them that if you think that it really comes down to Trump or Biden, they're nothing compared to the likes of the Bill Gates and the Bezoses of the world. They're the ones who control everything. And when they just make a decision of, we're going to move 100 million here, 100 million there, that's the way this works. And for them, I think it's a game. I think they just get a kick out of knowing that they can play God. I really do. I think there is something to be said for that power trip that, billionaire oligarchs are willing to go on. And even in the face of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people that are going to die senselessly, to them, it's just another day at the office.
Yeah, that's true. But I would like to just give one small point about the billionaires. They aren't a monolith. There are plenty of billionaires in other parts of the world that form their own coalitions that oppose the Bezos, the Gates, and stuff like that. So that's beyond the scope of this conversation. But yeah, right. They're not a monolith. So,
well, no, I definitely agree, and we could definitely talk about it another time. But I do think BRICS is going to play a role, and I do think that there's a lot of competing interests in other nations. I think that you could see just how devastated the West actually really is, whether they're willing to admit it or not, that Bolsonaro is not in charge of Brazil anymore. And so there's these little things that you see. And you're right, China's that stealth operator that just waits to pounce when the opportunity is right. That is pretty much their MO. They have been very cunning in how they've gone about it. They have basically allowed us to kind of destroy ourselves from within. It's not like they really need to do too much. They kind of are, just opportunistically waiting to seize all these opportunities. And to be honest, if it wasn't for what's going on in the Middle East and obviously what's going on in Ukraine, I think we'd be front and center with Taiwan right now. Like this would, especially if Trump gets in, I mean, there's no question that is something that I think will play a significant role in the next administration. It may play one again. I mean, again, I can't see Biden getting reelected, but however this ultimately shapes out, I do think that is a future path that is going to be very dangerous. But as it relates to where we are right now, I don't really know if there is sort of, like you said, there is no exit strategy. There's no off ramp for them to take now. And if they're going into Rafah, this is kind of like this is the last resort, because there's already talks that there has been exchanging gunfire between Israel and Egypt. There's no telling how much worse that this can get. Do you see the prospect that it could spiral into like a World War III type scenario, depending on how many of the bigger nations decide to get involved?
No, I mean, the only flashpoint is with Iran, and Iran clearly doesn't want to escalate. We don't want to escalate. We've proven that. I think it was in February. One of the Iraqi militias shot a drone at a U.S. base in Syria. Oh, sorry, I meant Jordan. It was totally in Jordan. So a suicide drone struck the base. 3 U.S. service members died. I think 4x more were wounded. Then the U.S. was like, you cannot attack U.S. bases and kill Americans without consequences. Iran, we're going to hit you back hard. Hey, Iran, we're going to hit you back hard. 5 days later, yeah, we're going to hit it back so hard. And then 2 days pass. Yeah, we're waiting for weather because, you know, we don't have like advanced targeting suites. We need to wait for weather. Essentially, they were giving Iran enough time to get all their assets out of the region because we're about to make 85 kinetic strikes in Iraq and Syria that hit empty warehouses and nothing. So we de-escalated. Then when Israel hit Iran's embassy in Damascus, they did the performative strike with their old missiles, not their new stuff, like stuff from the 80s, from the Soviet era, and got through the Iron Dome and the Arrow 2 and David Sling and hit military bases. And they were like, okay, show of force, that's enough. And they de-escalated. So no, I don't think World War III is going to happen over this. And yeah, gunfire happened with Egypt. There may be some skirmishes, but Egypt is one of America's largest strategic allies in that area because they're, you know, so indebted to the World Bank and the IMF. They kind of have to do what we tell them. And yeah, they'll de-escalate. So whatever happened at the Rafah border crossing earlier today, where at least one Egyptian soldier was killed. There's a gag order on it because Egypt is involved in the ceasefire negotiations, which is a main priority for the U.S. State Department to actually get a ceasefire in place. So, I don't think we're going to hear much about it.
It's a very good point. And I'm going to bring up this image because I think this is so telling of everything that's going on right now. You know, when you see just how much the Zionists try to constantly talk about, you know, the Holocaust and what that represented. And now you look at this image of an IDF soldier who has destroyed it looks like a library. It could be an office, but the whole image of the burning of the books in the background is just so telling on so many levels that they have become the Nazis in so many ways. And you often wonder if the overall results of what transpired because of what happened in World War II, that if this wasn't just an inevitable road that we were going to head down because of the decisions that were made, you know, post the end of the war between our nation, between the UK, and between Russia. And so,
yeah. No, I will just say, like, yeah, we could single out the Nazis just because, you know, they're the most prominent example of the ones we learned about in school books. But, you know, fascism is fascism. It all shares these parallels. You know, burning books was not exclusive to the Reich. You could do it in Spain, Italy, like any of the traditional Axis countries with their own ideologies. No, but because they're trying to cleanse out a different people, a different ideology. And part of that, what the Reich did, what Mussolini did, is destroying cultural sites, cultural artifacts, identity, erasing the history of what came before. This is not exclusive to the Nazis. They're trying to settle Gaza, and they're going to do a revisionist history eventually. That's what they plan to do. We were always here. The Palestinians were just like refugees, and now they live elsewhere. And by the way, they were never really a people. Where are their books? Where are their historical sites? See, they don't exist. So yeah, it's because they intend to settle and colonize and rewrite history. It's not going to work, but they're going to try.
Oh, they will. And I do want to share a quick story because I know that not everybody here typically gets out into the real world and is able to connect with people that truly believe in this ideology. So I was at an event with Jen over the weekend. I won't say where and I won't say who the person is. But what I will tell you is that the person is a voter in this district, registered as a Republican. Initially was very happy to hear that Jen was running against Wasserman Schultz for Congress. And liked a lot of her ideas, a lot of her policies. But the second it came down to the question of where she stands on the state of Israel, and Jen made it very clear that she does not believe that Israel has the right to exist as it currently stands, especially in the face of a genocide. Well, needless to say, this person not only took it personally, but then sought me out because she saw that I was there with her and was basically grilling me and asking me questions, and then suggesting that Jen is a dangerous person. I am going to tell everybody I know that you better not support her because she doesn't understand. The truth of the matter is Jen was raised a Zionist. Jen has gone through that whole experience of what it was like going over to Israel and planting a tree under armored guard and doing all those things that they do to indoctrinate you into this world. And so I think for her, it was a real personal affront that somebody who was once one of theirs has gotten away from the plantation, has broken away, and has figured out that this is all just one big scam. But the thing that she said that really stood out above everything else, trying to get like an idea of where she was coming from. We are the Jews. We have the right to this land. It's written in the Bible. And I was like, okay, well, if that's where you really believe things are, and that's the reason why the genocide is justifiable, then there is no point in talking to you any further about this issue, because you don't come to the issue with reason. You come to it with fantasy. I don't care what religion you are. There's over 4,000 religions in the world, and yours is not right. Again, my opinion, because odds are you're not right. And even if that were the case, religion has been a benefit for many people, but it's also been used to do the greatest atrocities this world has ever seen. And so this person who was coming at it from a position of fear, they all want to kill us. All the Arabs want to kill us. And she actually referred to them as Muslims. They're all Muslims. All Muslims need to go. Like, that was the attitude. And it's incredible how somebody who even said that the Jews, not kidding, the Jews are the most persecuted people on the planet, and then proceeds to explain that I happen to live a comfortable life. It's the whole trope. It's everything. It's, the best schools, comfortable suburban existence. I can't go out into the real world because somebody's going to come at me. I'm in danger now. And that is why we must kill all of the Muslims. Wasn't the Palestinians, wasn't the Arabs, it's all the Muslims have to go. They're all evil and they want to kill us, so we got to kill them first. And the scary reality is that there are a lot of Zionists who believe in that ideology. That's the scariest part of all. Now, granted, I do think she's in the minority, because I do think we're reaching a breaking point here where people simply can't look away anymore. They can't deny the realities of what this ideology represents. It is the purest form of supremacist colonialism in our modern era. And of course, it happens in a lot of different parts of the world, but this is deliberate. I mean, this is beyond the scope at this point. And of course, it's done under the pretext that we have an Israel lobby in this country that controls most of Congress. And even the ones they don't control, in many instances, they're afraid to speak up and do or say what needs to be said. So in the case of where Jen is at and the person she happens to be running for office against, this is like like a meeting of the Titans coming together right now. And so for her to say what she said in real time, I'm glad that she admitted the truth. I'm glad I got it out of her, that she was very transparent in her bigotry and that she's totally fine with the genocide because it's justified. It still is disturbing nonetheless to hear it in real time. But without question, I do think that they are losing this fight. They just don't know it yet. I don't think they fully understand how much they're isolating themselves from the world and how they are going to be turned into others, like the othering, if you will. That is where the boomerang is going to come back around to them. Because as you said earlier, the rest of the world is not on board with this shit, and they're starting to form alliances that are going to significantly harm America's power around the world. And maybe it's inevitable that it had to happen this way. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, I talk about that on my own podcast, Colonial Outcast. If you guys want to check it out, we just did a whole episode on Gaza, Project Gaza 2035, the war in Ukraine and Taiwan. It's all about, the West and Western hegemony out overplaying its hand and making all the wrong moves. But anyways, circling back to Israel, of course they're going to get isolated. But the thing is, it's still going to take time. It's going to be 3 years from now. It's going to be way after a ceasefire. There's going to be fighting amongst settlers. The government's going to be in shambles. the reconstruction effort is going to be mired in delays because they're sending UXO teams, unexploded ordnance teams, to like sift through the rubble and look for bombs so bulldozers don't trigger them and blow up the driver. And people are still going to be clinging on to this, like, Israel has the right to defend itself. Hamas uses human shields. So, and, you know, a lot of this is happening faster than I expected, because as a veteran and an anti-war activist, I often looked at Vietnam, and that started in 1965. Well, it started before that, but direct U.S. boots on the ground involvement started in 1965. In 1968, the National Guard murdered 4 students at Kent State during the protests. And that's when the country started waking up, like, why is this happening? Why are the police so violent? Why are our sons dying in Vietnam? And 7 years of like the most intense protesting, like burning entire neighborhoods to the ground, massive property destruction through different movements, like civil rights movement was going on at the time, like environmentalists. 7 years to make the Vietnam War finally stop, because they messed with the money so much, and they started messing with Democrats' re-election prospects. So I don't think this is going to take 7 years, but it's not going to happen soon. So we just have to bear that in mind, and also try to bring people over into the movement slowly, continue to have discourses, not with the hardcore, Zionists who can't be saved, but with people who's just like, I don't know, it seems like terrorists to me, I don't really want to get involved. Like, that's who you need to talk to, because like, yeah, for everyone who's been like so invested in this for years, not just since October 7th, but like for years, people who are just starting to wake up to it after 7 months of a genocide, you just kind of want to be like, what the hell, dude? Where have you been this whole time? But like, we really can't afford to gatekeep. So that's something we have to keep in mind.
I definitely agree. And I think, I mean, listen, is it frustrating? Are there people that I think are complete hypocrites? Yes. But the truth of the matter is, these kids are still getting slaughtered every day. So as far as I'm concerned, whatever is going to bring about the quickest resolution to this circumstance that will eventually say, this is it, it's done, this will not continue. Okay, fine. Whatever it's going to take. That's my attitude. So if there are others that are finally willing to come on board, I mean, listen, it took Bernie, forever and a day to finally start talking the way he needed to talk. I mean, it is a little, too late in some respects, but I'm glad he's doing it. Unfortunately, he's one of only a few. Why do you think so many are still so afraid, whether it is in politics or in the entertainment world, that still seem it's very trepidatious for them to get involved in any capacity?
Well, first of all, it's their careers, right? Politicians, being a politician is a career now. It wasn't necessarily like that in the 50s, but it definitely is now. So their careers are at stake. Therefore, their monies are at stake. There are heavy Zionist influences controlling both industries at very high level. And yeah, I call being a politician an industry, because it is. It serves the private sector. Right. Yeah, so that's why they can speak out, sure, but unless they're like a heavyweight or they're out of it, like John Cusack, he's no longer really acting anymore, or Mark Ruffalo, who's like untouchable, and like Susan Sarandon, who's also untouchable. Or who's another one who came out? Jenna Ortega. She's untouchable, essentially. Like, you're going to get destroyed. So that's why. But it's just simple. It's simple self-preservation.
Well, I was planning on seeing the Beetlejuice movie. Now I have even more reason to go see it. So kudos to her for having that type of gall to do that. And yes, it takes a lot in order to do it. I mean, listen, I wish George Clooney would come out and acknowledge what his wife has been doing behind the scenes. I understand that.
Yeah, I haven't looked enough at that story. I'm skeptical. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, I have seen that.
No, listen, I think DJ Khaled is one of the biggest cowards in the world, and he lives down here in South Florida. I mean, that son of a bitch is Palestinian, and he hasn't said one fucking word since that shit started. Not one. And that takes a lot of cowardice to just basically say, my money's more important than my people. And like in the worst way.
Yeah, but he's someone who's probably untouchable. He has enough money to start his own label, even if it gets dropped by the Zionists who run his own. So
true, which makes it even more bizarre.
I don't get it. Honestly, I feel like he's not even worth talking about anymore. Like after this, he's going to be irrelevant. Like in a couple years, people are going to be like, who's the guy who Don Imus who said that horrible stuff that he like lost his talk show back in the day talking about.
I first got into radio back in the mid 2000s. I actually interned at WFAN, and Don Imus was there every morning with that stupid cowboy hat on, and just he was.
I mean, it's that big of a faux pas. So he's done socially after this. Culturally, he's done after this. So
you know what I do hope does happen when it's all said and done. I hope that the dependency, especially in Democratic Party politics, the desire to feel that celebrities are the people you need to be looking to for opinions about politics, I hope that dies. Like, I really do. Unless you're really in the fight. Like, John Cusack is really in the fight. Susan Sarandon is really in the fight. Mark Ruffalo is really in the fight. Those people's opinions at least matter to some degree because they actually do put their money where their mouth is. They actually do put themselves in harm's way. But for the most part, the people that you constantly think, oh, I'm endorsing Biden or who cares? I hope that goes away. Last point before you go.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who served, and obviously somebody who has seen action, we don't have to talk about what you saw, what you did, or what any of your brothers in arms did. And obviously today is a very sentimental day, especially for you. I'm sure you've lost people. It always amazes me to no end how the loudest people who cheer for war, who support what's going on, especially those numbskulls who were waving the Ukraine flag on the House floor a couple of weeks back. These are people that have never served their country, ever, and they never would. It's always the people that never pick up a weapon to defend this nation that are the fastest to tell you that you need to go over there and die for this country. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that there is this propensity for the people that would never put their lives on the line are the ones that are always so quick to put other people's lives on the line instead?
Well, first of all, I think this is a tiered question. It's tiered by class, right? If you're part of like the ruling class, you don't fight. You are a decision maker. You go to Washington and you make the tough calls, in the Pentagon or in the White House or on Capitol Hill. You just don't do that. And when it comes to, conservatives, because let's be honest, it's generally people who lean right, who have the "Don't Tread on Me" flags and the Punisher stickers on their trucks, who are the most belligerent. And I think there's a lot of different reasons why they're like this. A lot of it's envy or like jealousy, like they should have done it, but they don't. There's also a lot of toxic masculinity going on. But to me, it really doesn't matter. I have with myself, the only claims of like the accusations of stolen valor come from people who have never served. So stolen valor is an accusation, just so you guys know, it's an accusation you make against someone who is in the military, who either lies about being in the military or lies about their military service, like medals they got, deployments they did. Well, George Bush didn't have any valor. He was a draft dodger. So I get called out for like not having been an Army Ranger or stuff like that, which is so stupid because I'm a prominent figure in this scene. So I've literally published photos of myself in Afghanistan and my DD-214, which is the exit paperwork you give out when you get out of the Army. It has all your medals, your schools, your deployments on it. So it's really easy to debunk. But yeah, it's always coming from the conservatives because it's threatening, because their one thing is like, Iran's a terrorist. These are terrorists. Hamas is a terrorist. I was like, I have a background in counterterrorism. I've directly engaged like Al-Qaeda and Islamic State forces in a special operations capacity. And I don't see how Hamas is a terrorist organization. I also did human intelligence collection and MI. I don't see how they pass the criteria for being a terrorist organization, except for the fact that we don't approve of their actions and their forms of fighting back against imperialism. That's what the terrorist label's really for. And as a vet who's hard to kind of discredit, me being a terrorist sympathizer, especially on Memorial Day, it's threatening. It's just like Jen. She grew up a Zionist. She's like, okay, this was wrong. She's very threatening because she has the credibility to talk about it. I'm also very threatening because I'm like, I used to think that my friends died fighting terrorists. No, it just turns out that we were fighting an illegal war for the sake of, special interests, money. Yeah. And it's sad. It sucks. But the word terrorist really means nothing. So, yeah.
Jen has a great saying. She says, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. And that's the truth. That's a very hard truth to swallow. And I don't think people really can wrap their heads around just how privileged we are to live in this country. And that's just living in the United States. Granted, we have a completely bought and paid for corrupt government, economic and political system that we are currently under as of today. But the fact that we are surrounded by oceans and we are surrounded by allies to the north and the south, that is a very big privilege to have that most of the world doesn't have, especially in the Middle East. And so because of that, it's a lot easier to wax poetic about a lot of things that go on in other parts of the world that will not personally affect you. At least it's easier to stand on the soapbox and make those statements. But as I have said, I applied for the Army shortly after 9/11. I did not end up going, and I'm probably grateful that I ultimately got talked out of it. But I have friends that went. They were never the same. There was a girl that I dated briefly who ended up going over. She got married to a gentleman that she met in the service. He ended up getting killed on his third tour in Baghdad. And she was never the same, completely fucked up as a result. And this is not even taking into consideration whether or not she looks at her service and what she did serving in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, that it was all a lie. And so to even wrap your head around that is incredible. But I do think we are coming to a point where the military industrial complex, at the very least, is going to have a very, very difficult time going forward, and probably is, recruiting people to join and to fight for this empire that is clearly going through some form of a death row right now. Things are going to change. And like you said, you thought it might take 6 or 7 years. It might not take that long. And depending on how this election shapes out, people are demanding change. I actually think, as crazy as it sounds, I actually think Jill Stein is going to perform better than people think, because I think this country is very upset and really wants to move away from what's going on right now. I thought RFK had an excellent opportunity if he was to come out in favor of the Palestinian people, but he fucked that up. And of course, he's going to go down with the ship with Rabbi Shmuley at the controls, as he should. And I really feel that, we just got to hang on tight. The best and most positive message that I can give in conclusion of this conversation, which has been fantastic, I must say. It was excellent to talk to you. The only way that we are going to get through this is through a labor uprising in the United States. When the working class decides that we are putting all of our differences aside, that we recognize that there are just as many working class supporters of Trump as there are of Bernie, and that coalition must be formed, we're going straight to hell in a handbasket if we don't figure out that this is about the ruling class against the working class. That is how the decisions are made in Washington, where they get to decide, I don't give a fuck what you want. I'm going to get paid, and I'm going to continue to facilitate this genocide, among other things, because that's what's in my best interest, not what's in yours. So until we recognize that our collective power is how we change things, we're not getting anything done. But I want to believe, in my heart of hearts, that we are going to get there. I hope it's sooner rather than later. That's all I can say.
Yep. No war but class war.
Appreciate you guys. Follow Greg Stoker's work. If there's anything you want to plug before you go, please do.
Yeah, if you want if you want in-depth geopolitical conversations from a leftist bet, an anti-imperialist bet, you can check out our podcast, Colonial Outcasts. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the places. So, yeah,
guys, the links are in the description. Greg Stoker, thank you so much for your service, and thank you for continuing your amazing service of preaching the truth, which we desperately need. Have a great evening.
You too. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Well, that was an exceptional conversation, to say the least. And I am extremely enamored with anybody who not only serves our country, but recognizes just how futile it is to defend the empire when it does what it does. And that is exactly what has happened for so very long. We are just pawns on the chessboard of a greater fight that has been fought for too long. The problem is, and particular with what's going on in Gaza and Rafah, shoot, now they can't lie their way through this bullshit anymore. They've been able to do it before, and it is still amazing, even to this day, how the lying persists from the same people who lied us into Iraq and Afghanistan. That's still possible. It still bothers me how naive the average American really is. And a shout out to Donald James. It is great to have you, of course, for 5 months supporting our small but mighty channel. It still matters. And all of that really goes towards being able to have these conversations, to continue this message. And why is it so significant? Because of this shit that is going on right now. Here is a clip of what is going on. And the IDF has the audacity to say that this was Hamas who did this. They can't even get their story straight. This was Rafah today. This was Rafah today. This is what happened. They bombed the magnitude of the bombs that they dropped were on such a scale that it was considered big enough to blow up 2 football fields. And they blew up tents. They blew up refugee camp tents. Now, of course, the PR feedback that they got was so devastatingly bad that even Netanyahu had to come out and make a statement, which is effed up in its own way. So I'm not surprised. But then again, what is surprising about this at this point? If you think that they're just going to stop, it's not going to happen. I mean, we could theoretically do something about it, but that would require severing ties with Israel. And is our country prepared to go down that road? No, because as much as it is religious-based, it's really financially based. That's the main crux of it all. And so, Colin, I want to be sure what clip I'm playing here. This other one with the guy with the American flag draped over. I just want to make sure that I've got this correct. So, what am I looking at here?
Which one?
The clip that was the guy. It looks like they're draped with the American flag. One of the guys is.
Oh, that's from a live stream where a Zionist was arguing with pro-Palestine protesters about.
Right. Oh, okay, so we will definitely play this now. It is always interesting to hear the justification for why they think that this is okay. So I believe this is from earlier today as well.
A war they can't win, thousands would be alive. My country did take a couple weeks. It took a long time before they started the ground invasion. It took a full month before they went in with ground forces, man. They took a lot of time to plan. Missiles.
First of all, this son of a bitch with the fucking Israeli flag wrapped in the American flag, fuck you! And fuck anybody who does that shit. There is one thing that I am sick of. I am sick of seeing. It's people who wrap the American flag with the Israeli flag. That shit should not be tolerated. We are not the United States of Israel. We are the United States of America. And yes, that is certainly an America first message, but you know what? In this case, it's absolutely necessary. So let's hear what Numbnuts has to say further about how this is Hamas's fault and that we must genocide these people.
Killing that. Yes, because that's what you do. When rockets are coming at you, you got to shoot at the launcher so that they stop shooting rockets at you.
How much you want to bet this guy's never served in combat to make such an asinine statement? The way that they talk, the way that people who have never served in combat talk, it is incredible. Incredible how stupid they sound. I really would. I would drop this son of a bitch in Gaza tomorrow. Hey, you really believe in this shit that badly? Go ahead. Let's see how much you believe in it. Go on. You know, when they say, oh, go over to Gaza, see how good it is. No, the people who need to go over there are the people who think that the genocide is okay, that what they're doing is acceptable, that this is perfectly fine. We can continue doing this with impunity. And so, fine. If this asshole thinks that it's okay, please, for the love of God, go over there and fight this fight if you really believe in it that much. We'll continue.
Listen, they didn't kidnap 200 civilians.
I disagree. Wait, have you advocated for the return of the hostages? Okay.
They're still on that kick. They're still on the kick of return the hostages, the 80 to 100 hostages that are still being held. How many hostages is Israel holding of the Palestinian people? What is it, like 6,000? That's the other thing. You have to be ready when they come with you with this shit. As soon as they come with the bullshit, you got to be ready to counterpunch immediately. They say where are they going to return the hostages? What about the Palestinian hostages that were held well before October 7th? And Jen's right. Israel has been killing its own hostages. They are just political pawns. That's it. You think the hostages are ever coming back? You're nuts. They're never coming back. As much as it hurts to say that, because I don't want to see anybody get killed. But those Israeli hostages, they're all dead. It's just a question of when. This is how it is. This is the ability to, as Nola says, over 9,000 Palestinian hostages. But as I said earlier, to the lady that I was talking to, that specifically said that the Muslims have to go on that grandiose scale, that they have to go. What she's effectively saying is that Jews are more valuable than Muslims. That's it. It's that simple. Their lives matter more than yours. So if we have to kill them all, we kill them all. And that's it. That's why this guy, this jack in the box with his stupid spliced flag, and whoever in the fuck is selling American, because that's what it should be called. I'm calling it here. I haven't heard anybody else use it. But these United States of Israel flags, they should be burned. If you really want to stand up for free speech in the United States, burn that fucking flag. Burn it. You see in a United States of Israel flag, burn it. What that flag says is justifiable genocide. That's what it says. If you are an American and you want anything to do with that shit, that's as anti-American as it gets. You can complain about a lot of different things that are going on in this country right now that are a problem, and there certainly are. But this guy, he doesn't represent the United States of America. And for those who are against genocide, you need to speak up against people like this guy, who probably lives in Roslyn or Great Neck or Port Washington or Jericho. I can guarantee you this. Or he could live on the Upper East Side. He could live in Manhattan. But here's what I can guarantee you about this guy. I bet everything I have on this guy. He does not live in an insecure place. He lives a very comfortable life. Wherever he is not wanting for food or education or economic opportunity. He does not have those problems. He is perfectly fine and content in the world he's living in, and he 1,000% supports Zionistic colonialism. No question. So this is what we need to get away from. And two wrongs don't make a right. We'll continue.
Listen, all I know is that my country was attacked, and if it was your country that was attacked, you would...
He just said it. My country was attacked. Then go to your country and get the fuck out of this one. This is not the United States of Israel, and that has got to stop. Like today, it has to stop. Unbelievable. But he gave away the game. He admitted that it's about my country. Okay, well, if that's your country, then go. Please.
I also want them to respond. You know, I know people that got killed. I do. I know people that got killed. Listen, a war is a war. Don't start a war you can't win. Tell that to Hamas. Don't start a war if you don't want to see dead people. Don't start a war. Hamas started a war. That's it. End of story. You can't say both sides. Israel didn't start the war. Hamas did. That's it. Yes, they are. Yes.
Regular Palestinians are Hamas, according to him. Regular Palestinians are Hamas, according to him, which again is justification for genociding the Palestinian people. That is how they justify their actions, by saying that everybody's Hamas. Even when, very succinctly, is pushed back upon, he gives away the game right away.
They most certainly are. 95% support in the Gaza Strip. According to Reuters, 95% of Palestinians support Hamas.
Okay, so why do
Reuters, a liberal news organ.
Why do Israelis your age not want to join the army?
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Israel and Palestine are the two countries in the world where the youth is more right-wing than the elderly. It is the only two countries in the world where the young people are more to the right. Yeah, as they should. It's called a draft. Same thing happened in the Vietnam War. Same thing happened in World War II.
So why don't you go over and fight then? Draft this son of a bitch and make him go over there. You're so fucking tough, man. You're so tough. You're so tough when you're not staring down the barrel of a gun or avoiding a death from above from a ginormous bomb. You're really tough, man. Really tough. Like I said, there's a reason why anti-Semitism is growing in the United States, and it's because of people like him.
That's what's up. It's a war. You gotta go fight. Sorry.
It ain't a war. It never was. It's a massacre. Total massacre. So when people think that the reason why anti-Semitism is all of a sudden growing leaps and bounds in the country, I can't imagine why that would be. Could it be because of guys like that? Nah, it couldn't be. We're all just a bunch of anti-Semites. He's very emblematic of that reality. It's very easy to wax poetic when your life is not on the line, which, as our new friend of the show, Greg Stoker, would tell you. There is this sort of, everybody's a Lindsey Graham, if you will. Just waiting to figure out how they can put their thumb on the red button because it makes them feel good. Makes them feel like they have power because they're so feeble and weak. They wouldn't last 5 seconds on the battlefield. But from the confines of the safe confines of the U.S. Senate, it's amazing what you can get away with. This whole idea, I mean, I would like to think that there will be some sense that will be spoken. But I still stand by what I said earlier, which is guys like this who represent the Jewish Zionist movement, they're going to isolate themselves from society. Eventually, the boomerang's coming back to them. And they're not going to be able to get out of the way this time. This is too much. There is no humanity. There is no self-reflection. This is hell on earth, and they're welcoming it with open arms. Tony, thank you very much. It was a great conversation. We're not done yet. And Teresa, love you. Really means a lot. Yeah, this is certainly a topic that I have a great deal of passion for because half of my background is Jewish, and I broke away from that when I was very young, because the side of my family, my mother's side, which is, they're raging Zionists, and I will have nothing to do with them. I have always identified more so with my father's side, which is Irish, and it gives me great pride to know that the Irish have been right on this issue from the very beginning, that they have stood with the Palestinian people, and rightfully so. But they've always stood against apartheid and, colonialism. I mean, how could you not? When you are Irish, it's kind of embedded in your DNA. You have to fight that fight. But of course, you don't want to be a hypocrite. And for too many, being a hypocrite is a big part of this fight. And what I would say as well is that if you really want to know why these anti-Semitic fires are being stoked so heavily for so very long, one of the main reasons why I have been so adamant about this fight for so long, obviously October 7th just took things to a whole other level, but what you have to remember is that the person that Jen is running for Congress against is somebody who represents the very worst of our American politics. Now, if you want to talk about one of those representatives that will wrap themselves in that United States of Israel flag, it's this woman who we should all be collectively working together to ensure that she is unseated in 3 months.
Great replacement theory was recently amplified on Twitter/X by none other than its owner, Elon Musk, and the right-wing darling, Tucker Carlson. Terrorists use the platforms to terrorize target populations, and Hamas even used the personal accounts of hostages and victims to live stream their brutality to incite further violence.
So she's sitting up there with the American. Now, you really can't see it because it's shining a very bright light. I can make jokes about what reflects off of her, but the point being is that she is wearing the Israel-U.S. lapel, and very proudly, I might add. And of course, it's up there basically talking about how everybody's against the Jews and how the Jews must be able to do whatever they want. But it's worse.
Mr. Taibbi, yes or no, should social media companies allow rape and murder to be live streamed by terrorists on their platforms in order to create fear and incite violence?
I don't know, Debbie. Is it okay if the IDF beheads toddlers? Is it okay for that to happen? Because that's been making the rounds on social media. Quite a bit. And Taibbi's face right here perfectly captures that sentiment. And keep in mind, this was at the time where, I'm not sure if it was this interview, but Taibbi ended up coming on our show shortly thereafter and was so perplexed. First of all, he was perplexed at this idea of how the hell is this woman still in Congress? Like, what exactly possesses people to vote for somebody as vile as this?
I believe that would violate their terms of service, would it not?
So your answer is no. It should not. They should not be allowed to do that.
Live stream rape and murder? No,
Right.
I think that would count as speech that would be prohibited under their terms of service.
Good. You do have absolutist policies, but
I do not have absolute. I do not have.
Please don't interrupt me. You have absolute. I've asked your question. You answered it. You do have absolutist policies. At least they have some limits. But I think a Homeland Security official.
With respect, Congresswoman, all journalists operate
reclaiming
under...
my time. See that? You're trying to rewrite history here. A few months ago, Mr. Kennedy, you compared COVID public health policies to barbaric, murderous tactics of Nazi Germany, saying that Jewish people in Nazi Germany had more freedom than Americans facing COVID health restrictions. In hindsight, Mr. Kennedy, do you reject this absurd and deeply hurtful and harmful comparison, or do you still stand by it?
Congressman, what you are saying is a lie.
That you said it.
I did not. I never
Okay.
I never, ever
Mr. Chairman, I'm
compared
happy to
COVID
enter into the record
countermeasures.
He really has a very hard time allowing other people to speak. It is one of the most underhanded tactics of a grifting manipulator, because that is what she is. She is working on behalf of corporate special interests, period. That's her MO. This is what she does. And so even for somebody like Bobby Kennedy, who is an avowed Zionist, as sickening as it is to say, But even she figures out a way to make him look like a victim.
And Mr. Kennedy said that. I reclaim my time. Unpledged delegates exist really to make sure that party leaders and elected officials don't have to be in a position where they are running against grassroots activists in this region.
You see, when you admit that the reason we rig primaries like you did against Bernie Sanders, it's to reaffirm this notion that this is a career, as Greg Stoker said earlier. This is not a term of service. This is a career, and do not fuck with our careers. We're here to make money and loot the treasury and make ourselves feel important because we're such useless idiots that this is the only satisfaction we could get out of anything that we do. She has stuck her foot in her mouth quite a few times, giving away the game. Now, of course, people want to just sweep it under the rug like it isn't really happening, but we all know that it is. So this fantastic clip right here from Track AIPAC, if you guys are not following them, amazing group. This is the amount of money that Wasserman Schultz has taken from AIPAC alone. Just AIPAC. They're not the only ones, but this is a big one.
In Israel, I mean, the comparison that has been made per capita to our 9/11 was emphasized. The equivalent population-wise of 40,000 Americans had died in 9/11 and 4,000 taken hostage. But more importantly, Andrea, that this was perpetrated by Israel's neighbors. This is not about avenging death. This is about ensuring that Hamas is eliminated.
Are you concerned that some Democrats may not support this?
I would hope that all members would support a resolution that condemns terrorism, the brutal attacks that were perpetrated against the Israeli people that were killed. We have 218 hostages. They took 222. Someone who votes against this, I would think, doesn't have a soul.
You're the one without the soul. You are a soulless hack and the worst form of public servant. You have been in office for over 3 decades, and you have rained holy terror on the people of Florida and, for a significant chunk of time, the United States. And now you are at the forefront of a genocide. You are at the forefront of stoking anti-Semitic fervor in the United States and beyond. You are an insider trader of the highest order, including a war profiteer, which, as far as I'm concerned, should put you in prison for the rest of your natural life. You are the person who was at the controls that ensured not only that Bernie Sanders would be screwed out of the presidential nomination, but that Donald Trump would take a significant chunk of the working class vote because you gave him the opportunity to spew Bernie's rhetoric under false pretenses, mind you. But it still worked, and he won because of you. Because of your political ambitions. Because you do not have a soul. You do not care about regular people. You do not care about the people in South Florida. You do not care about the nation as a whole. You care about yourself and nobody else, which is why anytime you get on your soapbox, it's always a woe is me. I can't get exactly what I want whenever I want. Bullshit rant. You are the person who went to Tel Aviv to be with Netanyahu after Chuck Schumer says that this is a bridge to. You are the reason people hate Jews. That's a fact. You have been hiding in plain sight for decades. And I got to tell you, I don't think AIPAC's going to get involved in this race. Why? Because she doesn't want any attention drawn to this at all. The only way that she survives again is if no one is talking about Jen locally. If AIPAC gets involved and starts running ads, They'll be talking about it because then people will be curious about the race. When people hear her and they see her, they reject her. But we are in a tricky spot down here. So if you want to see her go, don't sit on the sideline. You know how to get involved. Sign up to volunteer. Get on the phones, get on the ground. This woman can be beaten, but it's going to take everybody's collective efforts because I can assure you, they will try to keep it as quiet as humanly possible, especially in the media. And that is exactly how she wants it. I am sick and tired of seeing that person in a position of power. It's time for her to go. And we need everybody's help. So we hope you help. That said, do have one more story that we have to cover because it is important. I think it's fair to say that the momentum is definitely with Donald Trump. There is no question that he is riding high in the polls, but he's not leaving anything to chance. So he decided to go to the Libertarian Party convention over the weekend, and he made his pitch to suggest that maybe it is the Libertarians who should be supporting Trump. And we'll get to what ultimately happened in terms of the Libertarian Party nomination. But here's what the Donald had to say.
We do not have a free country if we do not have free speech, and very strongly believe that. We stand opposed to government tyranny in all of its many forms. We are opposed to a government that spies on political campaigns. I wonder who that might be. Like they did on me, spies on the American people, censors us, and crushes the rights of its own citizens, which the Biden administration does. We want government out of our business, out of our wallets, and out of our lives. That's what we want. We believe that Marxism is an evil doctrine straight from the ashes of hell. Having Marxism in our government is intolerable, and teaching it to our children is considered to us child abuse. We believe that the job of the...
Did he really say that teaching Marxism is child abuse? Donnie, I know you're hyperbolic, but for the love of God, you can't in one sentence say you believe in free speech and then on the other say that teaching Marxism is a form of child abuse. Make up your mind! We'll continue.
The United States military is not to wage endless regime change wars around the globe, senseless wars. The job of the United States military is to defend America from attack and invasion here at home. And as we speak, Joe Biden's minions are in Geneva, secretly negotiating to surrender more of our liberty to the World Health Organization. Drafts of the agreement show that they want to subjugate America to foreign nations, attack free speech, empower the World Health Organization to redistribute American resources. They're going to take our money and send it all over the world to other countries that we need for our own citizens in the event of a pandemic, and it can happen again.
I do think that that type of talk with libertarians is going to resonate. Now, I don't think that there was anything significant about this, and apparently Trump didn't even apply to get the Libertarian nomination. He just went there to appeal to them for their vote. But in terms of the fact that at least on from a civil liberties perspective, this country is getting infinitely more libertarian by the day. And obviously the pandemic had a lot to do with that, but we'll continue.
We believe that property rights are fundamental to a free society and that Joe Biden's rampant inflation is a monstrous theft from the American people. It's a theft. We believe that the greatest threat to our country is not from enemies abroad. It's the tyrants, communists, fascists, and thugs attacking our rights and liberties from within. And above all else, we live by the words of the great American patriot, Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. Only if you want to win. Maybe you don't want to win. Maybe you don't want to win. Thank you, D-Roy. Thank you. No, only do that if you want to win. If you want to lose, don't do that. Keep getting your 3% every 4 years.
That is a master troll if there ever was. Saying get your 3%. I mean, that takes, of all the things to say, to piss off the crowd. But it's actually true. But it doesn't have to be that way. There's a reason. We have a rigged political system that is advantageous only to the two major parties. So, my thought is, I actually think Trump doing this was actually very smart. The one thing you have to remember about these particular events and what makes them unique is that while the majority of people at the Libertarian Convention probably are not going to support Trump, just him being there and showing up and making a statement is more than likely going to gain him a significant chunk of the Libertarian vote. And I'll tell you why. Because the person that they have endorsed at the Libertarian Convention is Chase Oliver, who I didn't do that much research on. I heard him speak during one of the roundtable debates that also had Jill Stein and Claudia de la Cruz. This was done a few months back. And I thought he seemed reasonable enough on a number of issues. But ones apparently I didn't hear about, that when he started talking about them, to me, were, especially from a libertarian's perspective, there's no way that the average libertarian is going to get behind lockdowns and mandates, and as well as trans women in women's sports. Like, these are hot button issues, especially for conservative voters. Apparently, Chase Oliver supports those. And so by that measure, you would think that a chunk of those voters are just going to go over to Trump. That's what's likely going to happen, even if Trump doesn't mean half of what he says. But I do think that that is likely the transitional touch point that is going to happen. I also think, because of the fact that they did endorse Chase Oliver, I actually think there's a pretty good chance that this election cycle, especially with what's going on with Biden, I do think that there is a real shot that the Green Party is going to get more votes than the Libertarian Party this time around. It'll be the first time since Ralph Nader in 2000 that happened. So it's actually been almost a generation, long time. The shift, if you will, is likely to happen. And so this is why you speak to your enemies or to the people you disagree with, because you never know. You might end up convincing some people that it's actually worth getting behind you. This is why you can never take for granted this idea of just showing up, being at events, connecting with regular people. By doing that, you might end up converting some people over to your side. If there's one thing that Trump is, he is opportunistic. If he senses an opportunity that is going to help him politically, he's going to go for it, because he's a master marketeer. That is his one true skill, and he knows it well. He knows it better than anybody else in politics. And that's kind of what drives people nuts. It's also why a lot of people are, kind of looking around wondering, why can't other people do it? Because for him, he's very unique in that regard. And so overall, I think that's funny, Cheryl. All right. So for those of you, and we'll conclude on this note, because this is something I never forgot. See, when everybody's like, oh, I know Donald Trump. Well, I know Donald Trump too. I'm from New Jersey. I used to hear Trump's ads for Trump University back in 2000. That's right. This is going back a long time. And so I can tell you that the way this ad went was like this. He would come on. They would talk about how you're going to go to Trump University. You're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And this is what Trump had to say. You're going to learn how to be successful. You're going to learn how to make money. And once you enjoy it, you're going to be successful. And all I'm thinking is, what the hell did he just say? And is there anybody who actually bought this? That something as silly as, you're going to learn how to be successful. You're going to learn how to make money. And once you enjoy it, you're going to be successful. And I'm thinking, man, at least he couldn't make the grift. And again, I was a teenager at the time, but he couldn't make the grift any more transparent. It was so clear as day that what he was saying was bullshit. And yet he said it. There's totally people who are going to buy this and they're going to pay for my university. It's going to be great. Like, look, and this is why when people get on that, oh, Trump University was a scam. Let me tell you something. If you're dumb enough to give him your money after hearing that ad that I heard every morning going to school, hey, that's on you, buddy. If you fall for it, that's your problem. Period. That's where I stand. So I don't know for sure what Thursday's show is going to be. I may do an afternoon show. I haven't figured out a guest yet. I am most likely going to be in New Jersey. So, got some things to consider. But we'll think about it. Because there are some things that I'm going to want to do. So, there's a reasonable chance that Thursday we're going to do an afternoon show. Reasonable chance. 1 o'clock would be the time. So, no, it is not, Andrew. It is not a defense. However, one also has to take responsibility for their actions, too. There's also that factor. So, with that said, this has been a fantastic show. It's been one of my favorite. Really knocked it out of the park here tonight. Andrew, Henry, Kajawa, Teresa, and Teresa, thank you so much for your incredible generosity. It really means a lot. Travers, for all your humor. Rogant, Mario, Cheryl Wiles, The Sun, yes, The Sun. That is absolutely correct. And I made a point of that. Phoenix Hamilton, I agree with you. What's not to love? Greg was a fantastic guest, and I would certainly like to have him back. Holly Horn, Jimmy Zimzam, Michael Cooper, yes but no. Agreed. I think there was one other comment that you made that I wanted to highlight. I'll see if I can grab that before we go. Anybody else that I have forgotten? That this has been a very lively chat, a very big and very nice crowd. Got into the 50s, got almost to 60. We did okay tonight. Did okay. But did okay. Make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure that you have clicked the bell. Make sure that you comment once this live stream is finished. Make sure that you share, because it really goes a long way. Nola Beso with the comment of the night. The comment of the night. Over 9,000 Palestinian hostages. And that's all you really need to know. Stout Lover. Let's see. Who else? Donald James. 5-month anniversary. We appreciate you more than you know. Who else we got? Anybody else? Of course, Metal. Forgot about Metal. Self-care Maven. Guys have all been great. Sali. We definitely appreciate the important info that was delivered here tonight. And of course, the links are in the description. So make sure you get on board with all the wonderful work that Greg is doing. It's a very important point. Let's see. Anybody else that I forgot? I always want to make sure we get them all. Can't help it. Without you guys, what show do I have? Nelson Ortega. Looks like you checked in early, but may have left early. Either way, you came. and you were seen. And it's appreciated. Reverse fulfillment. And I agree. Read Major Smedley Butler's War as a Racket for Memorial Day. In fact, I think that book is actually short enough where you probably could read it in a day. And if there is a day to read it, today's definitely the day. I'm pretty sure I mentioned you, Tony D, but in case I didn't, mention you one more time. Thank you very much, my friend. Make sure you support these conversations. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. All the help is very much appreciated. And even Metal gives the credit where credit is due. Much obliged. We'll see you Thursday.